So when you hear the word serotonin, what's the first thing that pops into your head? It's probably the happy chemical, right? But what if I told you that's just the tiniest tip of a colossal iceberg? That serotonin's real story is way more incredible, connecting you, yes, you, directly to the sun and the very first life on Earth. Let's dive in.
It sounds like the setup to a really strange joke, doesn't it? I mean, think about it. You've got plants rooted in the ground. You've got lobsters scuttling around fighting for their spot on the ocean floor. And then there's us with our huge, complex societies and minds. What on earth could possibly link these three?
Well, the answer isn't a behavior or some kind of shared body part. It's a molecule, a single, ancient molecule that existed long before brains ever did. One that evolution has been tinkering with for billions of years, finding all sorts of new and creative jobs for it. And that molecule, of course, is serotonin.
Okay, so if we're gonna truly understand serotonin, we can't start with the human brain. That's actually starting the story at the very end. No, we've got to go back, way, way back, to a time before animals even existed. We have to start with plants.
This is the key shift in thinking we have to make. We've got to move beyond this pop culture idea of serotonin as just the happy chemical and look at its original, much more fundamental job. At its core, serotonin is a trophic factor. In other words, it's a molecule of growth.
You know, in plants, serotonin and molecules like it are kind of like the foreman on a construction site. They're telling cells when to divide, pushing roots deeper into the earth, and they actually help leaves literally chase the sun across the sky to soak up every last drop of energy. Serotonin's whole existence is tied to the sun, the cycles of day and night, the changing of the seasons. This is its origin story, a molecule for growth powered by light. You know, evolution is incredibly efficient. It's kind of lazy in a smart way. Instead of inventing a brand new tool for every single problem, it'll often just grab an existing one and adapt it. And serotonin, it's one of evolution's all-time favorite tools, a true molecular Swiss Army knife.
This timeline really lays it out. You can see how serotonin's job description just kept getting bigger and bigger over the eons. It starts in plants as a simple growth and light tracking system. Then it gets repurposed in early animals. In corals, it becomes part of a stinging defense mechanism. For worms, it starts to regulate things like eating and moving around. And as life got more complex, so did serotonin's resume.
And then we get to lobsters. This is amazing. In lobsters, a shot of serotonin changes everything. It literally makes them puff out their chests, stand taller, act more aggressively, and be more willing to fight. It directly determines their posture and their position in the dominance hierarchy. The same molecule that helps a plant turn towards the sun now helps a lobster become king of the seafloor.
Okay, so now, finally, we've arrived at the brain. But even here, serotonin's most important, most fundamental role is probably not what you're thinking. Before it can ever regulate your mood, it first has to build your brain. It's the brain's master builder.
So, this word, trophic, what does it actually mean? Well, it's pretty simple, really. It just means relating to growth. A trophic factor is like a combination of fertilizer and an architectural blueprint for your cells. It tells them to survive, to grow, and what they should become. This is serotonin's deepest identity.
Serotonin is there from the absolute beginning of life. The highest concentrations we find anywhere are in things like plant seeds and animal embryos. It's guiding neurons as they grow and form all their connections. And even in the adult brain, it's crucial for maintenance and repair. I mean, get this. If you could somehow remove serotonin from the brain, the actual physical connections between neurons, the spines, the dendrites, the synapses, they could literally wither away.
I love this analogy. We usually think of neurotransmitters as sending a very specific message from point A to point B. But serotonin often works differently. It's released more diffusely, bathing whole regions of the brain. It's like a drip irrigation system, constantly nourishing the entire environment, supporting growth and flexibility pretty much everywhere it goes.
Okay, so we've traced serotonin all the way from plants to brain architecture. But how does all of this deep, ancient biology actually connect to our modern lives? Well, it gives us a fascinating new lens to understand a very, very common human experience, the winter blues. And look, this link between serotonin and mood, this isn't some pop psychology idea. It is one of the most intensely studied areas in all of neuroscience. We're talking more than 13,000 scientific papers published on its connection to depression. The evidence is just overwhelming. When this ancient system goes off kilter, The consequences for us can be absolutely devastating.
And this chart, this is where it all just clicks into place. This shows how much serotonin the brains of healthy people are making and using throughout the year. And the results are crystal clear. Serotonin levels are at their lowest in the winter and their highest in the summer. It's not tied to temperature, it's not tied to the holidays. It's directly, powerfully correlated with one thing: the hours of bright sunlight on any given day. Our brains are still tied to that ancient solar rhythm.
And this biological reality has a name: seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. And we're not just talking about feeling a little bummed out when it gets dark early. For millions of people, this is a predictable, recurring pattern of serious depressive episodes that lines up perfectly with the seasons and with the rise and fall of our brain's serotonin levels in response to light.
So, if the problem is a lack of light triggering this ancient biological response, what's the solution? Well, it turns out the most effective modern therapies we have work by tapping directly into this deep evolutionary history.
The logic here is it's beautifully simple. The problem? A lack of bright light leads to lower serotonin. The solution? Give the brain the bright light it's craving. And what's remarkable is that studies show using a 10,000 lux light box is just as effective at treating SAD as the leading antidepressant medications.
And the mechanism is super direct. Light therapy boosts serotonin levels and helps normalize how the whole system works. But here's the part that is just absolutely mind-blowing. The most effective wavelength of light for treating SAD in humans, it's blue light. Now, why does that sound familiar? Because it's the exact same part of the light spectrum that is most effective for photosynthesis in plants. We are using the same light signal that life evolved to use billions of years ago. And that really is the ultimate takeaway. When we treat the winter blues with a light box, it's not just some clever modern hack. It is a profound acknowledgement of our own biology. We are tapping into a special, ancient relationship between life and the sun, a relationship mediated by serotonin that began at the very dawn of life on this planet.
So, this leaves us with one final and, I think, pretty practical question. If we know this, if we know our brains are fundamentally wired to respond to bright, natural light, does it make any sense that we spend so much of our lives inside dimly lit boxes? If our well-being is tied to this ancient need for the sun, maybe it's time we started designing our modern world to actually reflect that ancient truth.